The unlikely recruit. The galaxy trembled under the iron grip of the Void Empire, a ruthless alien coalition that had conquered 7 star systems in less than a decade. Their black ships moved like shadows across space, carrying weapons that could crack planets and warriors bred for nothing but war. On the remote mining colony of Kepler-7, humans worked in the depths of crystal caves, extracting rare minerals that powered faster than light engines. They were considered a weak species by most galactic standards. No natural armor, no telepathic abilities, no enhanced strength or speed. The galaxy saw them as useful laborers, nothing more. Tom Baker was one of these miners. At 32, he had spent half his life underground, his hands rough from handling drill equipment, his back bent from years of crawling through narrow tunnels. He was average in every way that mattered to the rest of the galaxy. Average height, average build, average intelligence scores on the standard tests. But Tom had something the tests could not measure. When the cave-ins happened, when the equipment failed, when everything went wrong, Tom found solutions. His fellow miners called it luck. Tom knew it was something else. An ability to see patterns where others saw chaos, to find the one path forward when all roads seemed blocked. The day the Void Empire attacked Kepler-7, Tom was 3 kilometers underground when the bombardment began. The mining tunnels shook like earthquake zones as alien weapons tore through the colony's defenses. Emergency lights flickered red as dust rained from the ceiling. While others panicked, Tom moved with purpose. He guided 17 miners through a maze of collapsing passages, using his knowledge of the cave system to find routes that even the emergency maps had missed. When they reached the surface, the colony was burning. Black ships hung in the sky like metal storm clouds. Void soldiers marched through the streets in their powered armor, their weapons crackling with energy that could melt steel. The human defense force had lasted less than an hour. That was when the Liberation Front found Tom. The Front was a rebel alliance of species that had refused to bow to the Void Empire. They had been watching the attack through hidden sensors, looking for survivors they could recruit. Most humans they found were either too scared or too broken to be useful. But Tom was different. As Void soldiers surrounded the small group of miners, Tom did something unexpected. He picked up a piece of mining equipment, a plasma cutter designed for breaking through rock, and modified it in 30 seconds flat. The tool that had been used for digging became a weapon that could punch through alien armor. The first Void soldier fell before he understood what had happened. The second soldier raised his weapon, but Tom was already moving, using the terrain and debris like pieces of a puzzle only he could solve. Within minutes, 5 elite Void warriors lay dead at the feet of a human miner. Captain Rex of the Liberation Front watched from his hidden ship, his 4 eyes wide with disbelief. In 40 years of fighting the Void Empire, he had never seen anything like it. This human had not just survived. He had won against impossible odds using nothing but scrap metal and quick thinking. When the front soldiers landed to extract the survivors, Tom was calm, almost casual. He handed the modified plasma cutter to Rex and said, "This might need some work, but it gets the job done." Rex examined the weapon. The modifications were brilliant, simple but effective changes that turned a mining tool into something that could challenge military-grade equipment. More importantly, Tom had done it under pressure, in combat, with no training. "What is your name, human?" Rex asked. "Tom Baker. I fix things that are broken." Rex looked at the dead Void soldiers, then back at Tom. "Would you like to fix something bigger?" Tom glanced at the burning colony, at the black ships in the sky, at the scared faces of his fellow humans. The Void Empire was the biggest broken thing in the galaxy. "Yes," he said simply. As they flew away from Kepler-7, Rex sent a message to Liberation Front Command. "Found something interesting. A human who fights like he was born for it. Recommend immediate recruitment for special operations." The message was flagged and forwarded up the chain of command. Within hours, it reached the desk of General Mars, the Front's chief of military operations. She read it twice, then made a note in Tom's file. Priority candidate for Project Last Hope. Tom Baker, former miner, sat in the back of the transport ship and watched his homeworld shrink in the viewport. He did not know that he had just become the most important weapon in the galaxy's fight for freedom. He only knew that something big was broken, and someone needed to fix it. Training the impossible. The Liberation Front's training facility floated in deep space, hidden inside a dead asteroid belt where no Void Empire patrol would think to look. For 3 weeks, Tom Baker had been the strangest recruit the facility had ever seen. While other new soldiers struggled with basic weapons training, Tom took apart their standard-issue rifles and rebuilt them with better targeting systems. When combat instructors taught advanced tactics, Tom found flaws in their strategies that had been used successfully for decades. Commander Blue, a 6-armed warrior from the Helix system, watched Tom during hand-to-hand combat training. The human was fighting against Core, a reptilian soldier twice his size with natural armor plating and razor-sharp claws. Tom should have been dead in seconds. Instead, he moved like water around stone, using Core's own strength and momentum against him. When the larger alien lunged forward, Tom stepped aside and used a simple shoulder movement, what would later be called his signature elbow technique, to redirect Core into a training dummy. Impossible, Blue muttered through his translator device. Humans are supposed to be weak. But Tom was not fighting like a weak creature. He was fighting like he understood something fundamental about combat that others had missed. Every movement served multiple purposes. Every action created opportunities for the next action. After the sparring session, Blue called Tom to his office. The commander's 4 eyes studied the human with new interest. "Where did you learn to fight like that?" Blue asked. Tom shrugged. "Mining is about finding the weak spots in rock. Combat is about finding weak spots in everything else." Blue leaned back in his chair. In his 30 years of military service, he had trained thousands of soldiers from dozens of species. None of them had ever compared war to mining. "Show me what you mean," Blue said. Tom walked to the wall display showing tactical scenarios, standard training simulations that new recruits use to learn basic strategy. He pointed to a situation where Liberation forces were trapped in a canyon with Void Empire troops on the high ground. "Standard response is to retreat or call for air support," Tom said. "But look at the geography data. The canyon walls are made of sedimentary rock with water damage. A few explosive charges in the right spots would bring down half the cliff face." Blue examined the simulation. The geological information was there, buried in the technical data that most soldiers ignored. Tom had found it in seconds and turned it into a winning strategy. "The Void Empire thinks in straight lines," Tom continued. "Big ships, heavy armor, overwhelming force. They are like a massive drill trying to break through granite. But granite has fractures. Everything has fractures." Over the following days, Blue gave Tom increasingly complex scenarios. Each time, the human found solutions that military academies had never considered. He treated battlefields like 3-dimensional puzzles where every piece, terrain, weather, enemy psychology, available resources, could be manipulated and combined in new ways. The breakthrough came during a full-scale training exercise. Tom was given command of a small liberation squad and told to capture a mock Void Empire stronghold defended by veteran instructors playing enemy roles. The stronghold was considered unbreachable. It sat on top of a mesa with clear sight lines in all directions, heavy weapon emplacements, and enough supplies to withstand a siege. Previous training groups had never successfully taken it. Tom studied the situation for exactly 7 minutes. Then he led his squad to a position 2 kilometers away from the target and began digging. "What are we doing?" asked Lisa, his second-in-command, a pilot from the outer colonies. "Mining," Tom said simply. For 8 hours they dug, not toward the stronghold, but toward an underground water source that fed the mesa's foundation. Tom had noticed something in the geological surveys that everyone else had missed. The entire mesa was slowly sinking due to water erosion. All it needed was a little help. When they detonated the charges Tom had carefully placed around the water source, the entire stronghold tilted 15 degrees in less than a minute. The defenders found themselves trying to fight, while everything around them slid toward the edge of a cliff. Tom's squad walked in through the front door and accepted the surrender of 12 veteran instructors who had never been defeated in a training exercise. That night, Commander Blue sent a priority message to General Mars. "The human is ready. Whatever you are planning, he can do it." General Mars read the report 3 times, then made a call to her intelligence division. "I need everything we know about Void Empire fortress construction. Find me their biggest, most heavily defended installation." Tom Baker was no longer just a refugee from a mining colony. He was becoming something the galaxy had never seen before, a human weapon that thought like a geological engineer and fought like a force of nature. The Liberation Front did not know it yet, but they had just discovered their secret to winning a war that had seemed impossible to win. The elbow of fate. The Void Empire fortress on Titan IX was supposed to be impossible to attack. Built into the side of a mountain, it had energy shields that could stop a nuclear blast and weapon systems that could destroy a fleet. For 2 years, it had been the staging ground for Void Empire attacks on 3 different star systems. General Mars stood in the command center of the Liberation Front flagship, staring at the tactical display. Every simulation showed the same result. Any direct assault on Titan IX would end in complete failure. The fortress was simply too strong. "There has to be a way," she said to her staff officers. "We cannot let them keep using it as a base." "Maybe we could," began Colonel Stone, but his words were cut off by a quiet voice from the back of the room. "The mountain is hollow." Everyone turned to look at Tom Baker. He had been standing silently near the wall, studying the geological data on a portable scanner. In the 3 months since his training, he had become something of a legend among the Liberation forces, but he still looked like an ordinary human miner. "What did you say?" General Mars asked. Tom walked to the main display and pointed to a section of the mountain. "The fortress is built on the outside, but the mountain itself is hollow. Look at the mineral composition. It is mostly limestone with underground water systems. The whole thing is like a shell." General Mars examined the data. The information was there, but she had never thought to look at it. Military planners focused on the fortress, not the mountain underneath it. "Even if that is true," Colonel Stone said, "we cannot attack from underground. The access tunnels are too narrow, and they have sensors everywhere." Tom smiled. It was the same smile he had worn when he modified the plasma cutter on Kepler 7. "We do not need to attack from underground. We need to attack the underground." 2 days later, Tom stood on the bridge of a Liberation Front stealth ship, watching Titan IX grow larger in the viewport. He was wearing simple combat gear, no powered armor, no advanced weapons, just basic equipment and a mining pack full of explosive charges. "Are you sure about this?" asked Captain Rex, who had volunteered to pilot the insertion mission. "The plan sounds crazy even for you." "The best plans always sound crazy," Tom replied. "That is why they work." The stealth ship dropped Tom at the base of the mountain, far from the fortress sensors. He had exactly 4 hours before the Void Empire's patrol schedule would bring soldiers to his location. Tom began to climb, not up the mountain toward the fortress, but down into the caves and tunnels that ran through the limestone base. His mining experience served him well. He could read the rock formations like a book, finding passages that would lead him exactly where he needed to go. 3 hours later, he reached the perfect spot. It was a natural chamber directly under the fortress's main power core, where the limestone had been carved away by centuries of water flow. The chamber was beautiful in its own way: smooth walls, crystalline formations, and a perfect acoustic echo that let him hear the fortress machinery far above. Tom placed his charges with the precision of a master craftsman, not to destroy the chamber, but to change its shape. He understood that the fortress drew its power from massive generators that created vibrations in the mountain. If he could alter the frequency of those vibrations, the results would be spectacular. When the charges detonated, the explosion was barely audible on the surface. But deep in the mountain, the limestone began to sing. The carefully calculated blast had turned the hollow chamber into a giant resonance cavity, amplifying and focusing the vibrations from the fortress power systems. Within minutes, the entire mountain began to shake. Not from earthquakes, but from its own structure fighting against itself. The fortress power core, designed to be stable and secure, suddenly found itself connected to a massive acoustic amplifier. The Void Empire engineers tried everything to stop the vibrations, but they did not understand what was happening. They thought they were under attack by some new weapon. They never realized that a single human with mining knowledge had turned their own fortress into a self-destructing musical instrument. The fortress shields failed first, then the weapon systems, then the structural supports. In less than an hour, the most powerful Void Empire installation in the sector was shaking itself apart from the inside. When the Liberation Front fleet arrived to mop up the wreckage, they found Tom sitting calmly at the base of the mountain, eating a field ration and watching the fortress collapse. "How did you know that would work?" General Mars asked over the communication link. Tom looked up at the falling debris and smiled. "Everything has a frequency. You just have to find the right note." That day, the Liberation Front gave Tom Baker a new name. They called him the Elbow of Fate because, like a well-placed elbow, he could hit the exact right spot to bring down something much bigger than himself. Breaking the unbreakable. The Iron Gate was the Void Empire's greatest fortress, a massive space station that guarded the entrance to their home system. It was the size of a small moon, armed with weapons that could destroy entire fleets and defended by the Empire's most elite soldiers. No enemy had ever gotten within 1,000 kilometers of it and survived. For 6 months after the destruction of Titan IX, the Void Empire had been hunting for the human they now called the Ghost Miner. They knew someone had turned their fortress into rubble, but they could not understand how. Their scientists studied the wreckage for weeks and found only evidence of small explosive charges that should not have been able to cause such massive destruction. Tom Baker sat in the briefing room of the Liberation Front's newest flagship, listening to General Mars explain why the Iron Gate had to be destroyed. As long as it existed, the Void Empire could send unlimited reinforcements to any battle. The war could not be won while the gate still stood. "Every military expert in the galaxy has studied this target," General Mars said. "The conclusion is always the same. It cannot be taken by force. We would need a fleet 10 times larger than anything we could possibly assemble." The other officers in the room nodded grimly. They had all seen the tactical analyses. The Iron Gate was simply too powerful, too well defended, too perfectly designed. Tom stood up from his chair at the back of the room. "I need to see the construction records." Colonel Stone laughed bitterly. "Construction records? Tom, this is not a mining operation. This is a military fortress in enemy territory. Everything is built by someone," Tom said quietly. "Someone had to design it, plan it, put the pieces together. I need to know how they did it." General Mars studied Tom's face. In the past year, she had learned to take his requests seriously, no matter how strange they seemed. "What kind of records do you need?" "Material supply chains, worker schedules, power distribution plans, waste disposal systems. Everything that shows how the station actually works, not how it fights." 3 days later, Liberation Intelligence delivered a massive data package stolen from Void Empire archives. Most of it was technical specifications that military planners would normally ignore: shipping manifests, maintenance schedules, environmental control schematics. Tom spent a week studying the data. He mapped every supply route, traced every power cable, analyzed every life support system. The other officers watched him work with growing puzzlement. He seemed more interested in the Iron Gate's plumbing than its weapons. Finally, Tom called for another briefing. When the senior staff assembled, he stood before the tactical display with the calm confidence they had learned to recognize. "The Iron Gate has one weakness," he said. "It is too perfect." "What do you mean?" asked General Mars. Tom highlighted several sections of the station on the display. The Empire built it to be completely self-sufficient. It recycles its own air, processes its own water, generates its own power. Everything is connected to everything else through automated systems. Colonel Stone frowned. That sounds like a strength, not a weakness. It would be, if the systems were isolated. But they are not. Look at the waste processing network. It connects to the water purification system, which connects to the atmospheric processors, which connect to the power distribution grid. Change one thing, and you affect everything else. Tom pulled up a detailed schematic showing the station's internal structure. The Empire built the Iron Gate like a perfect machine. But machines can be reprogrammed. The plan Tom proposed was unlike anything the Liberation Front had ever attempted. Instead of attacking the station, they would infiltrate it. Not with an army, but with Tom and a single small team. Their mission was not to fight, but to quietly modify the Iron Gate's own systems. 2 weeks later, Tom floated in space near the Iron Gate, wearing a maintenance worker's uniform stolen from a supply convoy. His team had spent days studying the station's work schedules, and they knew exactly when and where the external maintenance crews would be operating. Getting inside was surprisingly easy. The Void Empire had made the Iron Gate so secure against military attack that they had forgotten about the thousands of workers who kept it running. Tom and his team simply joined a routine maintenance shift and walked through the front door. For 72 hours, they worked their way through the station's service tunnels, making small modifications to control systems, adjusting flow rates in processing units, changing timing sequences in automated routines. Each change was tiny, almost unnoticeable. But together, they would create something the Iron Gate's designers had never imagined. On the third day, Tom sent a simple message to the Liberation Fleet: light the match. The fleet fired a single missile at the Iron Gate's outer hull. It was a small weapon that barely scratched the station's armor, but it was enough to trigger the emergency systems that Tom had so carefully reprogrammed. Within minutes, the Iron Gate began to tear itself apart from the inside. The war's end. The Iron Gate died like a star collapsing in on itself. Tom Baker watched from the observation deck of a Liberation cruiser as the massive fortress twisted and buckled, its own systems turning against it in a cascade of failures he had orchestrated with surgical precision. Emergency systems designed to save the station instead fed power to the wrong places. Life support networks pumped coolant into computer cores. Artificial gravity generators created impossible stress patterns in the hull. Within an hour, the most powerful fortress in the galaxy had become the expanding cloud of debris. But Tom felt no satisfaction as he watched the destruction. Something was wrong. The plan had worked too well, too easily. In 2 years of fighting the Void Empire, he had learned that they never made anything simple. Tom, General Mars called over the communication system. Sensors are picking up movement in the wreckage. Something big is still intact. Through the debris field, a shape emerged that made Tom's blood run cold. It was the Iron Gate's command center, protected by emergency shields and moving under its own power. More importantly, it was heading directly toward the Liberation Fleet. All ships, retreat to safe distance, General Mars ordered. That section still has weapons. But Tom was already studying the tactical display, his mind racing through possibilities. The command center was not just a survivor of the Iron Gate's destruction. It was the trap the Void Empire had been planning all along. "General, they wanted us to destroy the station," Tom said. "The command center was always meant to separate. It is not trying to escape. It is trying to complete its mission." As if responding to his words, the command center suddenly accelerated, its hull opening to reveal a weapon unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Energy readings spiked beyond measurement as the device began to charge. "What is that?" Colonel Stone demanded. Tom closed his eyes and thought like a miner facing an impossible cave-in. Every problem had a solution if you could see the right pattern. "It is a system killer," They built a weapon that can destroy entire star systems. The Iron Gate was never meant to defend their territory. It was meant to destroy ours. The Liberation fleet scattered as the weapon reached full charge, but Tom knew they could not run far enough. The device would turn their home systems into dead space, killing billions of innocent people. There was only one choice. Tom ran to the transport bay where his personal fighter was docked. It was a small ship, barely large enough for one person, equipped with nothing but basic engines and the tools of his old trade, mining equipment he had modified over months of combat. "Tom, what are you doing?" General Mars called over the radio. "What I always do," Tom replied as he launched toward the Void Empire weapon. "I am going to find the weak spot." The command center's defenses opened fire as Tom approached, filling space with energy beams and explosive rounds. But Tom flew like he had learned to fight, seeing patterns in the chaos, finding paths where others saw only destruction. His fighter danced between the weapons, moving closer to the massive device at the center of the command center. Tom could see it now, a perfect crystal formation that focused and amplified energy from the ship's power core. It was beautiful and terrible, like the limestone caves of his mining days. Tom smiled as he recognized what he was looking at. The Void Empire had made the same mistake they always made. They had built something too perfect, too rigid, too dependent on everything working exactly as designed. He activated his mining charges, but not to destroy the crystal. Instead, he placed them with the precision of a master craftsman, calculating angles and frequencies like he had done 1,000 times in underground caverns. When the charges detonated, they did not break the crystal. They changed its harmonic frequency by exactly 3%. The system-killing weapon turned that stored energy back on itself in a cascade of feedback that no engineer had thought to prevent. The command center vanished in a flash of light that could be seen from 3 star systems away. Tom Baker's fighter disappeared with it. 3 days later, the Void Empire surrendered unconditionally. Their ultimate weapon was gone, their greatest fortress was destroyed, and their armies had lost the will to fight against an enemy that could turn their own strength into weakness. The Liberation Front won the war, but they had lost their greatest hero. On Earth, they built a monument to Tom Baker in the mining settlement where he had been born. The inscription was simple: "He found the pattern that set us free." But in the deep space stations and frontier colonies, they told a different story. They said that somewhere in the galaxy, when things seem hopeless and the odds are impossible, a quiet human with mining tools still looks for the weak spots in the darkness. They called him the Elbow of Fate, and his legend lived forever.